A new report details the Trump administration's efforts to seize thousands of acres of land to build a border wall. CBS News obtained the report that was conducted by the Government Accountability Office. It found the administration acquired at least 135 sections of private land as of July and had planned to seize more than 5,000 acres to fulfill President Trump's campaign promise. The report also revealed there were plans to acquire another 991 tracts in South Texas. For more, let's bring in CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Hi there, Camilo. So how is the Trump administration able to seize private land for public use? Can you walk us through that process?
Sure. Good evening, Elaine. So for several years now, the Trump administration has been working to acquire hundreds and thousands of acres of private land along the U.S.-Mexico border for border wall construction. So far, the administration, as you very well noted, according to this Government Accountability Office report that we obtained, has been able to acquire 135 different sections of private land to use it for border wall construction. It is still working to get nearly 1,000 more sections of private land to continue fulfilling President Trump's long promise to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. The first step usually involves, Elaine, officials locating these lands and then surveying them and subsequently offering landowners some form of compensation for the lands. If no agreement is reached between the landowner and the government, then the Trump administration has been invoking what is called eminent domain, which is a power, Elaine, that the government has to take private land for public use. Now, the landowners are supposed to ultimately get compensation even if the land is acquired through this eminent domain process, but the government assumes legal authority over these lands, Elaine, as soon as they file a lawsuit in federal court. And so that has been a concern for many landowners, especially in South Texas, where a lot of the land where these border barriers have been built is private.
Yeah, because, Camilo, what actually happens to the people whose land has been seized?
Sure. So they all get compensation one way or another, either through a settlement with the government that is a mutual agreement, or if the administration takes them to court, they ultimately also get a settlement, but obviously they're not agreeing to have their land taken away from them. And one of the concerns is that many of these landowners are ranchers or farmers, and they are concerned that because of their land being taken, the rest of the property is going to diminish in value, that irrigation canals and other structures like cattle fencing is going to be disrupted. So a lot of these folks down in Texas oppose all these land grabs.
Well, we know that border wall construction has largely taken place in California, Arizona, and New Mexico, and you report that the administration's progress in Texas has been slower. What's going on there?
Sure. So it's just the reason for that is what we just discussed. In Arizona, California, and New Mexico, a lot of the land where these border barriers are being built is already owned by the federal government. Some of them are wildlife refuges that are owned by the federal government. But in South Texas, most of the land is owned by private individuals, ranchers, as I said, farmers, even churches who own land along the Rio Grande Valley. And many of these folks, like we said, oppose their land, having their land rather taken away from them.
Well, Senate Democrats have called on the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security to halt land seizures in anticipation of President-elect Joe Biden's administration. Camilo, how likely is that to happen? And how does the incoming administration plan to tackle the issue of immigration and specifically a border wall?
Sure. So for context, the Trump administration, as of this summer, had filed more than 100 lawsuits against landowners who refuse to allow their lands to be taken away from them through a purchase. And it was preparing as of this summer to file another 100 lawsuits. So it is still important to keep tabs on whether the incoming Biden administration will withdraw these lawsuits. President-elect Joe Biden in August said that he will immediately halt border wall construction and that he will withdraw these lawsuits against landowners. But a spokesperson for Mr. Biden's transition team told me today that it could no longer confirm whether the administration will in fact withdraw these lawsuits. So that is something that is still to be determined, and it's something that is not very reassuring to these landowners, to say the least.
Well, Camilo, before we let you go, I want to ask you about President-elect Biden's pick to lead the Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. What more can you tell us about him, and how significant is this choice?
Sure. So Alejandro Mayorkas, if confirmed by the Senate, would become the first immigrant and the first Latino to lead the Department of Homeland Security, which, as you know, has all these wide-ranging responsibilities, ranging from immigration enforcement and border security to cybersecurity and transportation security. The Federal Protective Services are also within DHS. Mr. Mayorkas, if confirmed, will not only have the symbolism attached to his nomination and appointment, but he will also have a very arduous task of trying to overturn many of Mr. Trump's immigration policies, which were enacted and implemented by DHS. A source familiar with Mr. Biden's transition team told me that Mr. Mayorkas is somebody who both the immigrant advocacy community and law enforcement can rally behind. He's had several leadership roles at the Department of Homeland Security during the Obama administration, but he's also a political refugee. His family fled Cuba after the communist revolution in the late 1950s. His mom fled the Nazi occupation of Europe in the 1940s. And in a statement today on Twitter, Mr. Mayorkas said that he will protect all Americans and also those who are fleeing persecution. And obviously that's in stark contrast to the humanitarian protection policies of this current administration, which has slashed refugee admissions dramatically.
All right, Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, always great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.